Hello, everybody. My name's Drake. Welcome to Pop Culture Conversations. I'm joined by my partner Bone.
Hello.
And Doc Z, or we're just gonna call him Doc. We'll let them take
Not
a
an
minute to
actual
introduce
doctor.
themselves, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I can't prescribe you anything. I can't prescribe anything.
Prescribe?
I can't prescribe anything.
Okay.
But you can subscribe.
Yeah, and like and share.
Said it there.
Subscribe, like, and share.
All right, so
This is our
first episode.
first episode. Bone, you got anything?
Welcome to the Pop Culture Lounge. That's all I can say.
I like it. So, we each had like homework this week to do before this thing. So, our homework was watch the first episode of Secret Invasion and do some of our own little research and come
That is
back and
Some hard homework too, man.
come back and have a conversation about what we thought, first impressions, what we liked, what we didn't like.
So, Secret Invasion, episode 1. Let's go with the first impressions. What do you got? What did you think?
Something seems off about the show. I'm not really sure what it is. It just seems off. It's like everyone's awkward. I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just not done well.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Fury seems off to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, they made comments about how he's changed and all this stuff. It just seems off. The woman, the Russian lady, or the one, she was in the embassy or whatever, wherever she was. I guess she was British, MI6 or whatever. She seems weird. It's like she's doing things. It's like they're all setting each other up in this weird, unobvious way to them, but it seems obvious to everyone else. It just seems off to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting take. I thought it was a great start. I think obviously, as we said, I mean, it can't be the same as the comics. It just can't be. It just can't be. But I thought it was an interesting setup. Obviously it was a little bit slow with deposition and setting everything up, but it's a shock, kind of unexpected ending. I didn't get that vibe, but I would say that vibe wouldn't be surprising because you're talking about a secret invasion.
Right.
You're talking about trying to set the things up. Because when you read the comics, right, it's set up like set up to be like, well, like who is who and
right.
Can you trust, and motherfucker in the comics, like Spider-Woman, the Queen, she's pretending to be Spider-Woman, convinces Tony Stark that he's a sleeper agent. So it's like the entire idea of this entire storyline is like everything that's going on really going on, and what is going on here. There's always this sort of,
who can you trust?
There's always a sort of switch up and then so that might be what you're seeing.
I'm sorry. Apparently there's no comic book people in this show.
Right.
There's no Reed Richards. There's no Tony Stark.
Right.
There's no Spider-Man type thing. I mean, are those people going to show up eventually or what?
I doubt it. I don't think so.
I don't think those people are showing up. So, my first impression, I before the show came out, I watched a video where they released the first like 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
And you see the beginning where the guy comes in and he's talking to the guy that had come out with all the information and had gotten all the crazy different things, and he was saying that all these different terrorist attacks all over the globe were all tied into the Skrulls, and it was all this alien cover up, and the guy's like, that whole back and forth was really entertaining, and I really enjoyed it as the preview to the episode, and that was pretty cool. And what made it even more insane was, spoiler alert, after the chase and everything ended up being a Skrull. So that was extremely cool. I liked it. I thought the dialogue there was well done, and it played into how do you know who's the Skrulls and who's not, which is the big question that Doc was talking about. I will say that I went in understanding it wasn't going to be like the comics, and it wasn't going to be superhero driven. It was neat. I like Don Cheadle. I like the fact they have James Rhodes in there, so you had the possibility of War Machine sometime during the show. Maybe if Nick Fury gets in really deep, then you could have a War Machine appearance. That, and we talked about that earlier too. A lot of what went on in the first episode to me was kind of anti-build-up for me. I mean, you had the scroll, you had Emilia Clarke's character bring that one scroll to their hideout, and he interacts with all the scrolls there, and that was pretty cool. And you get a little backstory on her and what's going on, and they're moving on with their plan. But some of the dialogue to me was kind of weak. I'm interested to see in the next episode. The end shocked me. I wasn't expecting what they did, especially if it's ended the way it looks. If what took place is they stick with it, that kind of was surprising to me.
Do you think they will?
I think so.
I mean, going with the comics, was that the one who was in charge of Shield?
Yeah.
And then what he told her in the comics, he told her, make sure you have your little robots of you going out everywhere. It seems to me that if you kill two of the most known people in the first episode, whoever that guy was that played
Agent Ross,
that went off the roof or whatever, he's a well-known actor. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, but his characters.
But to kill two of the most known people in the first episode, it seems to me you're going to see probably both of them again.
So
okay. Well, first, technically, that was a scroll posing to Agent Ross, so Agent Ross is still alive. Hypothetically, that hasn't been answered.
Right.
So that's kind of set up. Did he capture and replace Agent Ross, or did he just show up for this meeting as Agent Ross?
Right.
That's the question. Do you guys can maybe think that it's possible we could be sometimes being overcritical?
Oh yeah.
I am surprised at this because I sincerely I enjoyed it, and I didn't see all these things. Like I said, okay, it was a little slow, kind of, but it is deposition, right? It is a setup. It is the first episode. You're kind of trying to set up what's going on, bring everybody in. I know, but on the other side, you really can't just it's hokey when things move too fast. It's hokey when it's just like we jump in and we go, oh, we got the super serum. We need to go over here and do that. We just got to get the flying. I just found the thing. And that's like, so it's like you gotta have to set the scene where we're coming from, especially because the way things have already been set up, where the scrolls were painted the kind of swerve that you wouldn't normally have had. Right. That the scrolls were painted to be the good guys in when they were first introduced in the Captain Marvel movie. They're not bad guys. They were painted as bad guys, but it was a lie from the Kree to try to whatever. So you come in, you already have to kind of set them up as bad guys and explain why they're bad guys and why they were wrong. Now they're bad guys and what's going on with these characters and then they want to do that callback, right? So obviously all that's kind of necessary. But I didn't see it in that way. Like it was pretty interesting. It was slow. Obviously it was slow, but things were set up in a certain way, and I think it kind of follows along, not to the T, but kind of the side story that we see in the comics, which is a little bit different, but which is Nick Fury's the guy. In the background, everybody thinks he's dead. The heroes think he's dead, and he's in the background who discovers this and is setting up this whole contingency for when they do all this.
So I agree with your take. I'm just saying it's a 6-episode miniseries. So in 6 episodes, they're going to have to do a lot to move the story along. And we saw a lot of scrolls, which is cool. And we saw this warehouse abandoned, like Chernobyl style setup, which is somewhere like that is where they are, because they made a point to say that they're immune to radiation. So I didn't have a problem with it. I just was expecting a little more. I don't know, the end of the episode when they're at the square or whatever it was that they met, where they were going to intercept them, and the one kept changing. It ended up being the leader, and he started out a little girl with a ball, then he was the woman, then the guy, and then he's himself, and then the bomb goes off. That was really cool. I really liked that, because it's like, is this the same person that walked by and they're looking at me? That was cool. And I'm hopeful that the next episodes have a little more meat and going. And if it's just going to be Nick Fury, because if that's the case, if it's just Nick Fury by himself, then he needs to kick it up a notch.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying.
But see, they're setting it up, right?
Yeah, well, he seems off. That's why I'm
Right.
saying it's like.
But you see, it's like they are because they keep continuously going, and everybody's telling him like you're too old for this, and
Right.
you're past your
well,
prime. You shouldn't even be involved anymore.
That's what
And so
Maria,
they're setting that up.
That's the first thing Maria says to him. You know, you didn't have to come down here. You don't even look like you're ready for this.
Right.
And it's
and that seems to be what they're trying to do is set up like, okay, you
Yeah.
know, and then it's going to be this kind of, okay, well, yeah, but you can't teach an old dog new tricks or whatever.
Right, and the woman, the MI6 lady, she says, you know, it's obvious that he let himself get caught. At least when he's sitting in her office, she says, well, you're losing your edge or whatever because you were easy. My guys are able to catch you so easily, and it's like he walks over and plants that bug or whatever. It's like
Right.
I'm where I want it to be.
Right.
And so at least they're showing that. But
Well, that didn't seem so obvious to me. Like that it would necessarily wanted to be caught and was like knew those guys were watching him.
I think-
now, he might have.
in hindsight, when he walked out and they grabbed him, it was like, okay, that's odd. But when he's in the office, it's like
Right.
the way he's standing in her office.
Right.
He's like he purposely did that. I'm going to go get into this person's office now.
Then at the same time, if you're Nick Fury, that's how you stand in someone's office.
Yeah.
You don't pretend like you were caught flat-footed, even if you were. And I would say if you're Nick Fury, you would have a contingency on you in general. But I mean, from the beginning, they did. I mean, because like when he walked out, when he went for the walk, they were like, "You're gonna go take a walk in Moscow. It's dangerous in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You're gonna stick out like a sore thumb." All that. So it's like,
But yet
we don't know what they're
the other
setting
guy
up.
doesn't stick out like a sore
So,
thumb.
right?
so you got all the rumors that we heard ahead of time
Yeah.
about all these possible people that were going to be in this.
Right. Some of them have said they weren't.
Like the one that would make the most sense if you're going to bring her in would be Daisy Ridley,
Yeah.
Quake from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You mean Daisy Johnson?
It's Daisy Johnson. Yeah, excuse me.
Yeah, but she already
They
came out.
changed her name like 3 times in that show.
No, but I mean the actor's name, or not the actor's name, but the character's name was Daisy Johnson.
Daisy Johnson,
And then-
she was Quake. But her name was something before that or after
It was
that.
Sky,
Sky. That's
Yeah.
what it was. In the
but
beginning.
she's
She
not
was
going to be
the
in
hacker.
it. At least she came on social media and said that she's
No,
not
she's
in
not
it.
on
She
it.
wasn't in it.
Wow, that's
So, which it is. I mean, people that, but on the other side, like if you're writing, right? Specifically, because what you do like to try to make cliffhangers and surprises. If you're writing a story that's already written, and you're like coming with the same night, secret invasion, all these things, if you sincerely, like as a writer, go, okay, I want to like surprise people and shock people. I enjoy that factor. Then you're not going to do the obvious thing. It's like, well, obviously you would bring in Quake because that's what she is in the other story. So why would you do the obvious thing? So it's like there has to be a leeway in creativity for writers to be able to go, all right, this is the way I'm going to do it. Oh, if they screw everything up, that's one thing. But there has to be a leeway to go, okay, well,
Yeah.
So in the comics, Daisy Ridley would have, or not Daisy Ridley. We keep saying Daisy Ridley.
Sorry.
Quake would have been in there, and in the comics, Maria Hill was in charge of Shield, and Shield's like gone now. In the universe, it's done. There's no Shield.
Yeah, there's no
there's
Shield.
these
That's
secret
not
little
how you
things,
take
but the official big Shield helicarrier and all of that is in the comics. That's all. So, it's like, yeah, in the comics, it was an entire worldwide event. So in here, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some cameos. Because like it's the same way like like the Chris Evans cameo in the Thor movie with Loki where he does because that's one of Loki's abilities and so he flashes as Captain America for a minute in Thor: The Dark World. I wouldn't be surprised if something of that nature because this is the Skrulls they take on these different appearances. I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of short cameo, but I do think that this entire story it's a Nick Fury story.
Nick Fury spy
this
kind of
isn't
thing.
so like this is in the Marvel universe, but this isn't a comic book series. This is more like it's not about the guys, the flies, and the guy who can fly and the powers and all that. This is this secret sort of like mystery kind of agency kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand that, but it seems to me that if you have a race of or a group of aliens that are trying to take over the entire planet, and they can mimic the powers of whatever superhero they want to do, and you don't have any of those people in it.
Well, we don't know if they can mimic the powers.
No, that's what it says in the book. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but we don't know if they can in the universe.
No, that's
haven't
how
established
it was. That's what it was in the Secret Invasion comic book.
They learned that.
They had the ability to take possession of the character they were replacing. So if they were replacing Power Man, they would have Power Man's powers. If they were replacing, which was Luke Cage, if they were replacing,
I was gonna say, let's get Power Man to replace Power Man. Nobody will know.
so, but that they would have those powers when they replace that person. But
I guess as it stands on its own, it's not bad.
Yeah. So I think as you see what they're doing, I don't think because they're already setting up as having super strength and all that. So I don't think they're necessarily gonna have the ability to copy all these powers, which is what they in the Secret Invasion. That was the big deal about Secret Invasion was. As to opposed to the history of comics, they now had learned how to take over these powers, and they had made how to copy these powers, and they had made these scrolls that like combined all these powers, like the Super Scroll.
The Super Scroll.
But I think that I mean, in a way, it really is. We're kind of reviewing the first episode, but it is a little early to kind of know where everything's going to go. So I would expect a lot of twists. Obviously, there should be twists.
I mean, they have come out and said multiple times, Marvel has, that this was going to be a spy thriller. And this was going to be a cloak and dagger kind of never knowing in the room who's what and all that, which so far I have to admit that at the beginning, I thought the agent that was there was the actual agent, was an actual agent, and that he wasn't, and he ended up not being the person he was masquerading as. That guy ended up being someone else.
Once he started to go, the whole "you're crazy conspiracy guy" thing going on, I was like, okay, here we go.
I didn't see. When he killed the guy, that wasn't obvious. But when the guy like just changed, I was like, okay, that guy might just have like just snapped. But then when he killed him, it was like, okay, that's obviously he killed him. That's obviously.
I expect that it's gonna be entertaining, and I expect so far I like what I've seen.
It's very promising.
I'm not. I've watched a couple of reactions and a couple other things that were super negative. I mean, they were breaking down acting and all kinds of crazy stuff. But
see, there's a lot of that nitpicking stuff.
Mostly nitpicking on dialogue, and I'm like, right now, not that over concerned about the dialogue. I got the information I needed in the first episode.
Okay, so this is almost a great segue too, because this is another thing. There's a lot of that goes in. Like one of the things that nitpicked on that show was the AI art at the beginning. The credits is all AI art, which I think it's a form of art, right? It's not like, but they're like, oh, they're doing AI. But another thing that was just crazy this week, right? This is a kind of a segue. I was watching this week that a bunch of people in the Star Wars community were on Twitter or whatever were attacking the Ahsoka show because they said Ahsoka was crossing her arms. And they say she crosses her arms in every scene. Like, that's all she does. She's just gonna cross her arms. And it was like this bizarre nitpicking like thing where they're like, she's
difficult to know what
she's
to do with
crossing
your
her
arms.
arms. So they're like, she's got no acting. She just crosses her arm in every scene. That's all it's gonna be. A sort of standing there crossing her arms. Like there's no acting ability or anything.
Oh,
and this is an issue in the industry in because obviously there's those just basic fans, but in the people who have like passion for this thing and in the social media who talk about it, like people will be nitpicking stuff like crazy.
I'm glad you mentioned Star Wars because that was the biggest issue I had with the point I was making at the very beginning about for 6 episodes. I wanted a little bit more in the first episode than the little bit that we got on the scroll stuff.
Yeah, because there's a lot to cover in 5 more episodes.
Mm-hmm. And I would have liked some more to get me even more vested in, because Disney has proven to me that they can really screw up a 6-episode series. Now, like Obi-Wan is the example. The last 2 episodes of Obi-Wan were phenomenal. It was one of the best things. That fight between Vader and Obi-Wan at the end was one of the best things I've seen. I loved it. I've been waiting for something like that. It was great.
But why on earth?
But
when he let him go.
The first 4 episodes though are so ridiculous.
Because he has to. Because at the end of the day, because everyone has to be back in their places for episode 4.
Right. Well, why not have him get hurt or something and he has to limp away? Or Vader almost beat him.
Yeah, he got that scar in his eye from when he takes his helmet off in return.
But again, when I left you what I was but a learner, now I am the master. He has to leave him as the master.
Truly.
So the point though, those 4 episodes before that were trash, and I don't think anybody argues that. He's working at some meat plant on Tatooine, cutting meat. I'm like, what are you doing? And why are you even coming out here and being seen? That made, to me, most of that stuff was just
Again,
and in the but
Trash
a lot-
is harsh.
living by the waterfall in the fishing hole in Tennessee.
to me,
in the
trash
desert.
is harsh. I would have. There's a lot of ways that could have improved, and there's. I would have liked to see a different sort of first 4 episodes, and there was a lot of. There is some. A lot of it is bizarre, like how he just suddenly gets the ability. Like when he first faces off with him, he just gets pwned, and he's like, "You have no force abilities and none of this."
Yeah,
and then
like it
he just
wears off or
magically
something.
gets it and becomes Space Jesus. That's a little crazy. Like, that doesn't make too much
like,
sense.
He couldn't even use the
I
force for
didn't
half
like
the
that.
series.
I didn't
It's
like that he was so
It's
weak.
like, how do you not know what you're one of the most powerful Jedis ever, and you're like, for lack of a better word, you're a bitch for the first at least 3 episodes.
Look, I can understand being disoriented, being off your game, but I don't think the Force is like riding a bike.
Right.
But yeah, so
Plus, then there's a lot there with
And
Leia.
I'm
Once you
not-
stop riding the
and
back,
obviously-
man, you ain't never gonna get on them suckers again.
and obviously we've only seen 1 episode of Secret Invasion, and it was
It's too late to kind of compare it.
too early.
Too early, sorry, yeah.
Too early to compare it. I'm just saying, I hope that we don't get a repeat and they try to save this series in the last 2
But
episodes.
just taking first episode in comparison to first episode, it's already drastically different. Like it's already drastically. It's like this has promise. The first episode, like obviously we all have hope in the first, but when you compare the two, there's a
this
drastic
is-
difference in
This
quality.
is way better than the first
So things
episode
could
of
go
Obi-Wan.
down. But if everything holds this quality, it'll be livable, right? Now it may not be amazing, it may not be, but it'll be livable. If it just held this level of quality
It may
throughout
not
the
be
entire
amazing.
series,
It might not be fantastic. It won't be iron.
it'll be enjoyable.
Oh.
It'll be enjoyable. It may not be like oh my, this is the greatest Disney series that has ever been released, but it will still be enjoyable because this was, to me,
Yeah.
it was
I mean, you can
enjoyable.
let this,
And if
you
you
can let
hold
the
this,
show stand on its own, and to your point earlier about there seems to be this thing with people when something is done by someone, maybe a terrible thing, maybe it's not so bad, but and then every little thing that has nothing to do with that major incident
Right.
gets piled on. It's like,
And that's
did you
an
see
issue.
what else he did? It's like so Disney makes some bad choices, and now it's like just regular ordinary
Right.
run of the mill poor writing or whatever is just lumped into like these guys are terrible and they're
see, I do understand on the other side, right? I do understand when grievances get built. And when someone comes in, like they love, if you love Star Wars, and then you come in and going, man, like these people are doing the same thing they did before, and I understand that grievance gets built, but at the same time, I do see where it's like, for me, I go, this wasn't as bad. Like this
No,
wasn't
I
that
would
bad,
say it wasn't.
and people will pile on things. I'm not saying necessarily about Secret Invasion, but just in general, you'll see this a lot where people will pile and there'll be hatred for something, and I go, you know what? Like it was hokey, it was this or it was that, but it wasn't warranting that where people were like, this is a garbage.
right. I think if a group of people do a certain show, you should let it stand on its own, give it a shot, let it stand on its own, and then weigh the totality of it.
I liked, and I used the Obi-Wan as an example because there were some weak situations with Obi-Wan in that show up until the last couple episodes. But the other stuff in the episodes, like the stuff with Bail Organa and Leia and some of the other characters that were going on, I loved all of that. I thought it was great.
I kept expecting
And then-
Black Chrysanthemum to show up. I mean, I hope he shows up in Secret Wars.
Black Chrysanthemum.
Yeah, he's that guy. He's that Wookiee that's got the flower. He always wears that
If he's
flower.
in Star Wars, he's got to be in Secret Wars. Oh,
So-
it's Invasion. It's not
So
Secret Wars.
I will
it's Secret
say
Invasion.
that you and I had a conversation earlier that I haven't kept up with the current Ultimate Universe setup, which is where the Miles Morales Spider-Man fits in. But I will say that that side of Marvel was more about trying to make it more fit into
the real universe,
the real world.
which is kind of where it's much
Marvel-
closer to what the Marvel Studios is doing.
Right. Which, with that in mind, I don't know if they did a Secret Invasion in that side. I bet they didn't.
I don't believe. No, Secret Invasion was.
Just the regular universe. The
They
regular
don't really.
Marvel
They didn't.
universe.
If they had it, I don't think they don't.
The
address
original
it.
Secret Invasion stuff was such a huge and epic storyline that went through. Each title had like a year worth of books, their issues for like almost a full year, 8 to 10 months were nothing but Secret Invasion. And that was everything. Like all the Avengers titles, there was like 3 of them at the time. Even like the other, all the other titles, like Thor, all that stuff, Fantastic Four, they were all involved because it was all arcing through all these books.
So those issues that you showed me earlier, it wasn't just a standalone run.
No, that was those are the regular issues of those 2 titles.
Those are the tie-ins.
Those are the regular monthly issues for those 2 Avenger titles, and they were just the Secret Invasion tie-ins for those months.
So like the new Avengers kind of is in between.
It seems
episodes.
to me that you should hire comic writers,
right,
to write, at least to work with the writer of the story. Because look, think about it, right? Who right now think of a property or an IP or whatever that's been created in the last 20 years that's as great as stuff that's coming out of the comics.
So there's one organization, and it's what I went live on last night about, and that's Walking Dead. Because the comic book writer, Robert Kirkman, is the executive producer on the TV show.
Yeah, I think they need to do more of that.
And the thing is, on that show, because it was almost panel for panel the comics, they changed certain aspects. And I was wrong. Daryl Dixon was actually a character only created for the TV show.
Right.
But there's like in this show, there's a couple deaths that mimic the comics, but for the most part, there were people in the comics that died that didn't die on the show, and people on the show that died that didn't die in the
stuff
comics.
Like that is
so
fine, but
they changed it enough to keep it original.
When you have an established storyline that has worked well for decades,
that's what
and
they
then
did.
you take someone who is, because why wouldn't you hire the person who's lived with it and breathed, eaten it for so long?
See, on the other side.
So you're saying that person was the executive producer? Was he the showrunner or was he the executive producer?
He was in. Robert Kirkman's been involved in all of the different Walking Dead.
The whole time?
All 3 shows, the Fear of the Walking Dead, the Talking Dead, the Walking Dead, and the 3 new properties. The one, Dead City, that just started.
The Talking Dead, Walking Dead, and the
Talking Dead was a talk show that came on right after Walking Dead, and they would have different guests on, and sometimes Robert would be on himself, and they'd talk to him, and they get like what they thought about that episode, and they review it. It was pretty interesting. But the main one was Fear of the Walking Dead, and Walking Dead were the 2 ongoing shows. Fear of the Walking Dead is still running. The Walking Dead ended in October or November of last year.
Right.
They had a season finale.
On the other side, it's not just one. Because like at the same time, there are people don't like it who are writers in the comic book industry. You know, there have been storylines people hate, and there have been all that. So it's there are some. And if you want to just pick some of the greats, and then, but at the same time, you know, it's like when you look at comics, like comics are like the things that are done in comics like can only work in comics. Like they and I'm not saying they could make their own thing, but it's like at the same time it's like, you know, and this is one of the issues the comics will run into is because you don't have one writer. It will change out, and so it's like, and every writer has a different view of the character and looks at it a different way, and writers will come in and retcon and change what, you know, the last writer did. So it's like all of that.
But didn't they hire Timothy Zahn to work on the Ahsoka show in some capacity?
I don't know.
I think they did.
But
I think they at least consulted with him about Thorn or Thrawn or whatever.
Thrawn. So
Thorn, the blue Thorn, right? Is that his name in Marvel's Blue
Thorn is a great character, though. Let me tell you.
So the other point of that though is, and it's going to strengthen his Doc's position, is that Walking Dead is about zombies, and it's way easier to do zombies and that kind of horror stuff, and keep it true to what the original format. And in some cases, with CGI and all the new technology, they really don't have an excuse other than they wanted to do something different. So
that's where I think a lot of people who are critics on YouTube fairly and rightly say, if you want to change something so drastically, just come up with your own stuff. Well, if you're going to take a proven IP and just, I'm not saying that I totally disagree. So I understand you have to make changes.
There are people who are saying that, you know, you're looking at, you have some major events that have taken place in Marvel Comics, some major story arcs and storylines that took place in Marvel Comics that would make great multimedia movies, TV shows, whatever.
Like Streets of Poison.
So the Secret Invasion was one of the more popular events of the last 20 years. And
really, is that? Do you concur with that? Because look, I mean, I'm just going to.
Well, I wasn't reading at that. So I wasn't reading at that time,
obviously.
But I would say, I'm not going to disagree. But I would say
I'm not saying it was.
I would say there were a few events in that whole time that could have that right. Because listen, the entirety of Secret Invasion is set up by Civil War, which was already adapted, which sets, and that's the reason why it works out in the way it does, because they're all separated because of Civil War and the registration and all that, and Cap's dead and all of that. So it's like, yeah, that's not actually Captain America. That's Bucky, I believe. The Captain America in Secret Invasion.
Yeah, look, we need to sit down with whoever killed Captain America and have a serious talk with them.
So, and then that Secret Invasion ends, and it builds to World War Hulk.
Right. World War Hulk already happened.
Was that before that?
Yeah, World War Hulk already happened. World War Hulk already happened, and because they got rid of the deal was they had Ragnarok, which is another thing I've been wanting to see, but will never occur on Marvel Studios, which is Rune King Thor, but that's never gonna happen. But they had Ragnarok and Planet Hulk before Civil War because they had to get rid of Thor and the Hulk, because basically if they had Thor and Hulk in Civil War, whatever side they were on would win. Like, obviously, it would be difficult to have them. You know what I mean? And you could put them on opposite side, but even then, it would be. So they got rid of them for all that.
I think Thor would have been on Cap's side. Honestly,
well, he was because he comes back. When he came back, there's a whole because when he comes back, there's just a whole book on Thor where he shows back because Iron Man was a jerk during Civil War, and he shows up and he just beats the royal crap out of Iron Man, and he was like, listen, Thor does this. When he pops back up, Iron Man's like, oh hey, what's going on, Thor? And he's just like, let me show you what a true god is, and he just beats the crap out of him, and he's like, he's like, yeah, I'm not down with you,
and then
I'm not down with you at all.
He gets his ass beat twice. Because when Hulk makes it back to Earth after the Illuminati,
he beats everybody up. Thor isn't back then, but he beats everybody up.
So who is the mightiest Avenger? Let's answer this question once and for all. Who is the mightiest Avenger?
You know what's crazy? There's people who have gone over that, and it's like, most times they face each other. It's always even. Usually breaks up. Somebody breaks it up or something.
Well, look, since you brought that up, I wanted to. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. And I think of those movies have gotten a lot of garbage or a lot of guff. I think the whole arc from the first Iron Man until Endgame, the redemption and the basically the coming of age of Tony Stark is fucking phenomenal. Excuse my language.
It is.
It's like the performance that he gives in those last.
That's Robert Downey Jr. is amazing.
He is amazing. I was like, I don't understand how come he didn't get an Oscar for that stuff. That guy
because people don't take those seriously.
Actor.
People don't take comic books in movies really like on that level of receiving
until a couple years later.
Yeah, but even has anyone received an Oscar for a Marvel movie?
No,
it didn't.
They tried to nominate Black Panther, but that was just about
one or something.
Stuff, but what?
Didn't the Wakandan Black Cat?
I don't think they did. They? I don't believe so. They tried to nominate it for Best Picture.
I thought it won.
No, if anybody was going to win an award for acting in a Marvel movie right now, that last James Gunn film with Chris Pratt, he was.
Well, I mean,
Robert Downey
should have.
Some of the scenes with Pratt, like when rockets, like you think he's dying near the end.
Yeah. That was
and he's
phenomenal.
He's literally like screaming
I love
in tears.
the dynamic between Chris Pratt and the Thor kid. I can't remember. Look, I can't remember these people's names.
Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
When they're Thor movie, when they're on when he's like, I'm gonna leave you the ship with you. He's like, oh, you're giving me my own.
Black Panther did win some.
Some people don't like the humor. I can understand. People think there's too much at times. But I think it's great.
I don't think this. I think like the stuff that they were doing with Thor is where the humor becomes to be too much.
You're talking about the solo Thor.
Well, with the Ragnarok, but Ragnarok was great, but it was just a little too much to me. Like, you do need some badass scenes.
I agree.
And you don't need to ruin all that with comedy.
The point that I was making was, you're trying. It's like when you're doing a podcast or shorts, like we're doing. You're looking for content. You want the content that's going to get people's attention and that they want to see. Secret Invasion was something in the last 20 years that's newer, that had oomph. It tied into what they did with the Captain Marvel movie. They've been pushing that character. They've been wanting to do what they want to do. They could have done a lot more with the storyline than a TV show that was a spy novel thriller with Nick Fury. They could have maybe, I don't know, maybe this would be great. Maybe this is going to be the show. Maybe is it Iger or Geiger? Iger.
Yeah, Bob Iger.
Maybe he's got something in his back pocket. Maybe this six episode deal is really just a way to set up something bigger coming down the road that they're going to do with this character.
Well, whatever they're doing, they need help because Disney is they've been hitting in the box office like
it seems like right now
losing money.
They keep making the wrong decisions, and I'm going to tell you that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was probably the best thing I've seen that's been all Disney Marvel since Endgame. The Spider-Man movies are co-done with Sony, right?
Yeah.
And
okay, but see, I see. Here's the other thing, because a lot this has kind of been the story though, right? Because like really, there's really as far as wide like critics and all that, because obviously, you know, people watch whatever, but that there's very few in general of all of the Marvel movies that people really point at and go, that was awesome, right? There's a lot of filler ones, but it's like the for the longest time it was the Winter Soldier. That was the big one. Everyone was like, that was an awesome movie. Some of them were like, okay, and whatever. But there are very few where people went like, these were amazing movies. There's still excitement around it because people love these characters, because you have comics that carries all that. But in general, 5-10 years ago, it was the same thing. People were going like, okay, this is the best. This was okay. Like, this is the best. This was great. These were okay. These were crap. And the majority of the stuff that was coming out from Marvel, and they weren't even doing a lot of series back then, people thought was crap. People were like, oh, it wasn't that great. It was whatever. So it's kind of been the story. It's kind of been the story. It's the same thing if you look at comics. Like, if you honestly look at comics, like when you take Marvel comics, like there are some what's coming out, like what's coming out of the comics right now. Are you really buying everything they're selling?
No.
The majority of what they're selling, and there are one or two runs that are great, and some of it is just legacy.
I don't want to say
right?
it's crap.
Some of it is
the majority's not crap,
but some of it is just legacy.
A lot of it's just
filler.
Tired.
But see, this is what it is, dude. This is what it is. When you have this kind of quota, you have to fill, you have to write, you have to make things every week. You get filler. The same thing like when you take most albums will have a lot of filler. There's like if you have to add, if it's not when you get the idea and you come up with it, you can do it. So it's got to fill, it's got to sell. You got to have a book out every 2 weeks, every month.
Right. Well, if
you don't have great ideas,
that's a fair assessment, and I think, you know, being overly critical of a movie for a movie's sake, I think it's unnecessary.
So it's kind of like the TV shows right now where they're all right. We're doing this to fill in the gaps between feature films. Now, at the beginning, when they did the first Iron Man movie, and they had those 4 Iron Man movies, and you had the Captain America movies, you had the first couple Avengers movies, you had the Doctor Strange movie, and you had this whole story arcing deal going on between them all, and they had the little end cut scenes, and they were putting together a puzzle that was bringing us to Infinity War with Thanos, and it introduced with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and all that kind of fit together. It's like that was so well done. And yeah, some of the movies didn't make the dollar in the box office, but the Marvel fans, the overarching story and the end credit scenes and what was going on in the movies and the quality of it was there. There were some that I don't watch because I don't want to go back and revisit it, but there's some that I could watch over and over again. Now, let's jump past Infinity War and Endgame to what we've seen since then. I was really excited about Kang. I really like that villain. And has he died 3 times now? Loki killed him. Ant-Man killed him. And not Hank Pym, but Scott Lang. Not even the original Ant-Man. It was Scott Lang. The second Ant-Man killed him. Like, Ant-Man killed him.
I like him. I like that. I like that.
I'm
actor.
just
I
like,
the movies.
you basically just showed that one of
Ant-Man can't even get love in his own movie.
Ant-Man killed Kang.
Right.
And now there's like a whole council of Kangs, which is fine because there is a council of Kangs. And I liked it.
Do they have an orange Kang?
But they've already pushed that. Marvel went and pushed all that stuff back an extra year. Like, it was supposed to be out when 2025, now it's 2026.
Yeah, the Riders.
They pushed the Secret Wars and Eternity War, which is the Secret War stuff, back to 2027 because they're talking about trying to build continuity up to get to piece this story together when they get there, which I really hope it's great. I like the Shang-Chi movie. It's not real popular because nobody really knows much about Shang-Chi.
Yeah,
but
I think they should have put
it was
him in.
entertaining to me, and I like the
They should have
Easter
introduced
eggs.
him a little bit beforehand to really get us invested in him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I liked the fact that they had the character in there from the Iron Man movie that was posing as the Mandarin, and then
They kind of fix that.
and then how they
Ben Kingsley?
Yes, and how they come back and explain that the character that had these rings was actually the real Mandarin, and that over the years they had called him this, and they had believed that it was rings he wore on his fingers. So
Overall, the movie wasn't a bad film.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. It was on the low end for Marvel's dealings, but I think that's something that over time would become something that people look back on and like.
I didn't think the Elementals was that bad. Is that what it's called? The Elementals?
The
I don't watch
Eternals.
The Elementals
The
is a
name
newer
was
thing.
bad. The name was very
Elementals
bad.
is a different one. It's a new one.
Anything I can't remember is bad.
So the Eternals, those characters I really like, but
It's
this
not
is
the
another
same.
conversation that Doc and I have had. We did have this conversation. The Eternals movie was all right. It set up a couple characters that I really like, but at this point, are we going to see Dane and the Black Knight? Because he gets Excalibur
yeah,
out of
that's
the
set up
box
to
at
have
the
it
end of
12
the movie.
years later. It's like,
And
okay,
are
everybody
we-
forgot that already.
And we get Star Fox at the end of that movie too, and that's Thanos' brother.
Star Fox from the video game?
No, Eros, Star Fox.
Oh,
Controls
yeah,
emotions.
the guy with the red.
The white and red at the end.
Yeah.
But it's like some of these characters are characters that would have been better having that Eternals movie should have come out before Infinity War. Because a lot of the stuff that went those characters would have been more
Right.
interesting.
Well, you see,
Because when Thanos goes to Titan in Infinity War, and he's fighting the Guardians of the Galaxy minus Rocket, and he's got Doc Strange, Iron Man,
Spider-Man.
Nebula, and Spider-Man, and they're fighting on Titan. That's where you should have had Star Fox. Should have been on Titan. That's where he lives. That's where he's
but I
from.
doubt he's going to be related to Thanos
I have a question.
in the studios.
I have a question. Because I remember the comics when they were coming out for the Infinity War. The Infinity Gauntlet or whatever those are. I ended up not reading them all. I just wonder, because correct me if I'm wrong. Does the Hulk get stronger the angrier he gets?
Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong.
Okay.
I'm going to correct you if you're right.
Yes.
Did I say correct me if I'm right?
No.
Wow, I was like, man, I know. It's like my brain is like totally just oozing out
No,
of my
that's
ear.
correct. But
So, do
there
you know what I'm going to ask? You know what the question
But there are
is?
times in the Hulk storyline where that wasn't active because Banner was in control.
But he
When
wasn't in
Banner
control.
was in control and he was the Hulk and he was smart Hulk and talking, that aspect of Hulk's power was not always fully enacted, which is why in that last set of movies when Hulk's smart and he's just going doing his thing, he's kind of like,
Which was fine, but I'm saying as far as him being so terrified of Thanos, that to me seems a little over the top.
But is that what it's been decided is that he was terrified? Because I think they set it. I think they set up a whole like because I remember the conversation around it being more like okay because if you watch how it worked out, then he like had to, like an identity crisis and he becomes Professor Hulk. But the way the conversation I remember people having back then wasn't decided necessarily if it was afraid of Thanos. There was a whole thing about him like having this back and forth with
It seems
Banner.
to me the point the writers made when Thanos just mops the floor with him.
On the
They made
Asgard
a
ship.
point to show that he is getting severely punked right now. I mean, just like these shots, shot after shot after shot, and he's laying out. He's just like, and then Homeboy has to shoot him across the universe to get him out of there before Thanos kills him.
Right.
And then he won't come out. It's like, does he owe Thanos rent money? And he doesn't like, no, I don't want to pay the rent. It's like,
Well, it's
you
like
know?
it's like I don't
I just want to know, is that,
at that
consistent
point,
with the comics?
At that point, not really. I don't know because Hulk was like on there beating on him and getting his ass kicked.
Look, I'm not going to understand getting your butt kicked, but
So
seems to me the
I
Hulk
don't
would go get
know
his
if
butt kicked again.
Thanos had 2 stones in that movie. At that point, I don't know which 2 he had.
Did he have the Fear
He
Stone?
didn't use any of them.
But I don't. He didn't use them against Hulk. I don't know if he could have actually killed Hulk at that point.
Hold on. He didn't have any of the stones yet, did he? Or he
No,
only
he
had
had 2.
one. No, because
He had 1, and he took the cube.
and after
then
he
added,
the Hulk is sent away, then he
so he
gets
had
another
one. He had the one that the Guardians had left on whatever the planet was.
Which was the Power Stone.
The Power Stone. So I don't think he would have been able to kill the Hulk. Not permanently kill him.
It just seems to me
So
that,
Hulk is
which
like Hulk is like Wolverine in the sense that he'll regenerate from anything.
But
Literally.
is he that way in? Because listen, when you look at the
But not in the movies. They didn't.
in the
do it.
movie, because when he snapped, his arm didn't regenerate immediately. I don't know. It did regenerate eventually, but he was
But
like
not
he
for
was
Banner.
all it was all shriveled up.
Oh,
you
you're
could
talking
say,
about-
well, the stones and all that, whatever. But
Or
maybe-
it hasn't
maybe
been
they
really
weren't-
painted that way.
Maybe
Obviously, he's a weaker version. And then the way they set it up, it looks like he would have killed him. Like he beat the crap out of him, and he didn't even use a stone. But it's like this two sides where it's like either the Hulk has to be really weak, or I feel like it would be difficult to write him in the story without, because I mean they have the Thor, but Thor had this whole journey to get that strong. He had to go and get a weapon, and then it was this whole journey and then he couldn't, like he didn't go for the head, and so now he has to regret all that and all that.
Yeah.
But like the Hulk, like he doesn't have that sort of story. There is no thing about him like where, like other than like, if they try to drag it out to the whole movie where he faces them like 12 times and each time he
No,
gets
I
more
understand.
angry, but overall, and in the end, everyone has to lose, right? And Hulk doesn't have that journey. Hulk doesn't have that. Okay, now Hulk found a way to become stronger. He sat around and just got angrier for the rest of the movie in this corner, and then he comes back, and now
Yeah,
now
but-
really bad.
now
Yeah, but in both those movies, Hulk doesn't really do anything. He's wearing armor at one point, right?
And then the second one is just more he's just there to kind of,
Just be the
and he's more there for
scientist.
comedic effect.
Well,
really.
I find it
So-
interesting that
but-
because of the real quick, because of the way the licensing was done, we never really got to see the real people. Because was the Hulk even involved in that storyline in the comics?
He was,
yeah.
but I think he was Professor Hulk at that time. He wasn't. He was
During
like he was
Infinity Gauntlet?
during
No.
Infinity Gauntlet. I believe so. I don't believe he was the.
He might have
I
been.
believe so. I believe he was Professor Hulk, which he's Professor Hulk doesn't have that.
No,
Professor Hulk doesn't get stronger because he's Bruce Banner's brain.
He
so
just- but he's
he
still-
has his kind of strength.
He's just still awesome, though. He's not like the way they made him in the movie. So
Well, I wonder if his point is right, though. If that's really what.
That's a lot of it. This is the
So-
same issue they have, right?
Because that makes sense.
Because going back to what we were talking about, because we're kind of getting off a tangent. This is the same, what we were talking about earlier. This is the same issue they really have, which is they did this 10-year build-up, this giant story, and now everything else
just compared to
pales in comparison. And it's like, and it's like, and it kind of occurs in the comic, but eventually, if you wait it out, somebody comes back with something a big deal. But it's like it kind of occurs in the comics where it'll be like this storyline, and unless, because what you'll have is in solo issues, like if you have an artist with vision, he'll have a whole idea set up. And if you have the perfect circumstances, like they did with Civil War and all that, where it can keep setting up to another thing in the comics. But in general, you'll have those big deals, and then it'll just kind of, and then you'll have like it'll peter out, and you'll have this and that, and then there'll be some short stories, and it's like Batman will go, he's in this big crossover, and now he's back to just beating up thugs on the street, and Superman has to go, he went over, and now he has to go over here and fight these other whatever. We have to kind of find something to do. So it's kind of that where they were trying to set up King for all that, but it is weird. It is weird to have him just just murdered like that, like all over the place. Like he's not becoming enough that strong. But they were trying to set that up because it's multiversal. But it's like realistically, once they go multiversal, and once and because it's not it's almost like a cash grab, right? Thanos was a build up. It was a long build up. This Kang thing isn't really a massively long build up. He's getting explained really quickly. He's popping up here and getting murdered. Thanos wasn't that way. Like Thanos was just kind of in the video, like talking to the guy, and he's like whatever, and he has minions working for him. So, but it's more like that trying to. So, and then I think the other issue where they're losing money, they're like, all right, we got to get something out there that's really great. People like Kang, he's an OG Avengers villain, so this is the way to go. But that it's not being handled properly, and then you have all these other heroes who have to kind of go and do their thing.
Yeah, it's like there's so much water coming on the ship. They're bailing, and they just threw the plug overboard with the water. They're like, there goes the plug.
So, just to backtrack for a second, not to stay there, but on the comic side of it, to answer the Hulk and Thanos question, if you go back to the comics during that timeline, there was a book called Warlock and the Infinity Watch. And at that point, it was after everything was done. And the stones have been broken up by the members of the Infinity Watch. Warlock has his back, the Soul Stone, which was the one that was in Vision's head. And in that storyline, there's a point where Drax and Thanos go toe-to-toe. And Drax the Destroyer in the comics is powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with Thanos.
They were the first one before they revamped him.
And Hulk and Drax could go toe-to-toe. And Thanos and Hulk could go toe-to-toe.
Which seems to me
the thing is that Thanos would win 9 times out of 10 against either of the two of them one-on-one, not because of sheer strength, but because he is like the ultimate I'm 10 steps ahead of you mastermind kind of bad guy villain.
Thanos was?
Yes. And he's just prepared for every situation. Where Hulk is just a mindless rage.
Right.
And Drax
was like a child. He's not
Drax had mental issues worse than what they did in the movies.
Like legitimate, like he's like a child.
Like legit. There are a couple times in the comics where he's cognizant and you can conversate with him
until they read because later on he becomes before even the movies what they made him. He was redone, but the original Drax because he could fly too. The original Drax could fly.
Super powerful. He would have wiped in the movie. Drax the Destroyer should have wiped the living floor with Ronan the Accuser.
Yeah, it's like
but it was still. I liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't want to trash it because those movies are really well done.
Oh, I'm not trashing.
I'm not saying you are. I'm saying
my thing.
It's just coming from as a fan of this character.
As a comic book fan, but on my side of it, those Guardians of the Galaxy movies are the three of those three movies are probably three of my most liked Marvel movies. There's other ones I like a lot, but those three, that trilogy to me, for me, was perfect. I did not like some of the things they did, but the overall arcing what they did, I was entertained. I love the characters. I like what they did with the characters. I even like how they tied the High Evolutionary in to make that last movie a Rocket Raccoon origin story. I really liked it. I thought it was great.
Right. Well, I think one of the main problems they're having is that from the onset, right? Because if you remember back to when the superhero movies were like the death knell of any company trying to do them. Because back in the day, it was like, superhero movies coming out. Oh, and how bad is it going to be?
A lot of that would be because they would actually try to follow the comics. And that's the issue. Potentially. If you try to fully adapt that, it doesn't work out right.
No, I understand. Right.
The exception was those Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies.
Right. And those were really the first ones that did well.
Those are still in the top 10, 15 grossing superhero movies of all time.
Yeah, Sam Raimi did those, right?
Yeah, no, Sam Raimi did the other one.
I think Sam Raimi did the first 3 of those.
Oh no! I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Andrew Garfield.
Those 3 Tobey Maguire movies are just set a different standard.
Even then, they were the new best for what they had for what we had so far. But even
at that time, they were amazing.
They were.
No pun intended. They were amazing.
Amazing.
That was a pun.
Spider-Man.
Well, I find it. What I was going to say is that it seems to me they don't have a face because Tony Stark Robert Downey Jr. was the linchpin. He was the anchor of that entire thing. They don't have.
See, they
don't have an actor. They don't have a.
I think even just out of that, really, the issue is, they just don't. They don't seem to know how to get out their own way, and how to pick the talented people with ideas, and give them the reins and let them make great things. Because a lot of these things, it's like it's given this person, it's given that person, and when it works out, it just doesn't come out right. But it's like a lot of when you look at stuff like Jon Favreau with Star Wars, where when he was allowed to kind of go over here, and then who's the other guy with the hat? I can't remember his name.
David Filoni.
David Filoni, and that's why everyone has a lot of hope for Ahsoka when he came, what he did with the Clone Wars.
Well, David Filoni,
all of
with
that.
the Rebels was his like kind of pet project.
Right.
He was way involved, ingrained.
And so,
in it.
But these are people that kind of prove themselves.
The Ahsoka TV show it's like the culmination of David Filoni's project. I can't see where they're gonna. I have such high hopes for that. I'm
tempering my expectations.
Right. But see, these are people that have proved themselves to have this ability.
Right. But
and it's like a lot of the stuff
you do really well, and then you each end up drinking your own Kool-Aid.
But see, on the other thing is that they can't get out of their way. There's this whole of pushing this agenda, pushing what they want, or has to be this or has to be that, whatever. And so it's like, at the end of the day, it's just not working out. Like, people aren't identifying with these characters. People aren't finding these stories interesting, and so they can't seem to, because like I sense, I do understand there's a lot nitpicking, but I sincerely think that should be able to kind of, you can tell. Like when you read a great comic book story, you know this is a great comic book story, and that should be obviously, like, you would assume the people who are greenlighting things on that story looked at it and went, "This is a great story."
I've never read a comic book.
But listen, there'll be guys like one of the biggest things. Like I hated when I was like a couple years ago when I was reading Batman, and they had Tom King who was writing it, and he had this. He was doing like a great run. He was doing all this really great stuff, and they shortened they cut his run short by like 15 issues. And the thought was because this is the reason, they didn't really give a reason, but people thought the reason was because one week, because Batman was usually at the top. Batman was usually the top selling. 1 week, Immortal Hulk, which was an incredible storyline run at that time, outsold Batman 1 week, and like they kind of reacted and they cut his thing short by 15 issues. And he was doing some really amazing stuff, some really great stories. And after that, that's when they gave another guy over in the control. I mean, that's when they gave Luke Fox became Batman, and although those, for me, those stories it just kind of fell apart from that. There was like a couple great things like Joker Boy or whatever, but overall the majority of it, and it's like these are things that will occur where they'll have great people and then they'll just like cut them, like how they screwed up with James Gunn because of these tweets, and now DC's kind of swept in and took him, and so it's like he's obviously, like you said, one of the best things that's coming out of Marvel. And I believe this is his last movie with him, and he's got all this set up with DC. So it's like all of those things, they're just stepping all over their own feet.
Basically, Time Warner just handed him the key to the kingdom, and it's like, there you go, DC Comics. Whatever you want to do.
I think it's possible. There's a danger that James Gunn has done so well.
It's possible. I think you just hope so because you're not a DC fan. I think
DC's done well. I want to see DC. It's like, I really enjoyed the Superman movies when they came out in the 80s. Those were really great. And I think the Batman movies were fine. I just personally don't like the writing style necessarily of DC all that much. I think there's some really cool characters.
So I like James Gunn. I like what he did with Guardians. The issue I have with DC right now, and it's not a big issue, but the issue I have is that I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I really like
Henry Cavill.
Thank you.
Who?
Henry Cavill
as Superman. Cavill. I really like him as Superman. He's one of the better Supermans in a long time.
I haven't seen it.
I'm not gonna talk about any of the other castings. I like Jason Momoa as Aquaman. Yeah. I'm gonna keep the Batman comment down for the moment.
I can't.
Why would you? And hold on. What?
I'm gonna say that I would have left some of the characters you had cast in there and let James Gunn work with them. They have that recut of Justice League that came out was so epic and so
Zack
awesome.
Snyder cut.
We're calling that the super loaf mix. Is that the? It's the French loaf and with you stuffed it inside of a loaf of bread.
And I think I would have given James Gunn the option to use those people to do something with it instead of having to recast all of those characters. Because as of right now, Gadot's out, Cavill's out. I heard that. I don't know who they're using. I don't know about Jason Momoa. I don't know if this next Aquaman movie is going to be it and he's done. I don't know.
I mean, how much of the stuff that's been coming out about all this stuff has actually been confirmed that the companies that are, who makes the DC stuff? Is it Sony?
Warner Brothers.
Warner.
So Wonder Brothers, have they confirmed all this stuff, or is it rumors?
Well,
no, Henry Cavill is no longer.
They
Superman.
never confirmed, but a lot of that, he released a statement.
Henry
and
Cavill
was
said, "I'm done.
We've parted
I'm
ways."
not coming
So
back.
he wasn't.
You guys liked his performance?
It's not that he came back and talked to him because he did something. He did the cameo for them in one of the movies, and then he came back and talked to James Gunn, and he was like, "We talked, and I'm not going to be. He doesn't want me to play. He's not. They don't want me as Superman right now. Or we parted ways.
James Gunn has a different idea for the look he wants for Superman. It's not going to be Cavill.
But I think in the end, boiling this down so we don't get too loud here. What we've come back to is we're still ever hopeful for the
that's
future.
true.
Ever hopeful. And hopefully, Ahsoka will be great. All these other ones will be great. Whatever the other ones are on the list, I can't remember off the top of my head. And then, we'll see. We'll be back.
We're hoping that the next episode of Secret Invasion keep going up.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about overall series. And we'll hopefully when we come back, I don't know when this is going to be released and when the next one will be released. After the next episode, we'll, all your fears will be fixed. Will be resolved.
Stay tuned for Secret Inflation episode.
But that's not very secret. So.